Go ahead and start. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's Planning Commission. This is the regular July 6th, 2011 regular meeting of the City Planning Commission, and I'll begin with a few introductory remarks. The City of Sioux Falls Planning Commission serves as an advisory board to the City Council on land use and zoning matters. Action taken tonight on rezoning requests, major amendments, future land use amendments, and ordinance amendments will be referred to the City Council for a public hearing on Monday, August 1st, 2011 at 7 o'clock right here in the Carnegie Town Hall. Action taken on preliminary subdivision plans will be referred to the City Council for action on Monday, July 18th, 2011, unless associated with a rezoning request, which then would be heard by the City Council on Monday, August 1st, 2011. Action taken tonight on conditional use permits is final unless appealed to the City Council, and any action taken tonight on the final development plans or minor amendments is final. At this time, the Planning Commission will approve the consent and regular agendas. In order to place a certain non-controversial item on the Commission's consent agenda, planning staff and the Planning Commission applies the following criteria. First, that the request conforms to the SHAPE Sioux Falls 2035 Comprehensive Plan. Second, planning staff recommends approval of the request. Third, there are no audience members present or written comments received in opposition to the request. And fourth, the application meets all conditions and requirements of the ordinance. Before I read the consent agenda, I want to ask you all to ensure that your cell phones are turned off or silenced, and that when you come forward with your comments, you state your name, and that your comments are limited to 5 minutes. The consent agenda items are: item number 1 is approval of the June 1st, 2011 minutes. Item number 2 is plats. Item number 3 is a rezone from the O Office District and the 57th Street East Plan Development District to the C4 Plan Commercial District for allowed uses at West 59th Street and South Louise Avenue. Item number 4 is a major amendment to Subarea B of the Red Rock Park Plan Development District to add off-sale alcohol as an accessory use to the allowed uses at 5400 East Arrowhead Parkway. Item number 5 is a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to allow motor vehicle display and sales at 3316 South Hawthorne Avenue. Item number 6 is a conditional use permit in the General Commercial District to allow development of a site greater than an acre for screen printing and apparel retail at 3410 South Kiwanis Avenue. Item number 7 is a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to allow expansion of a non-conforming use, a residential garage, at 1017 East 8th Street. And item number 8 is a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to allow a motor vehicle repair shop at 909 North Lincoln Avenue. Item number 9 is a final development plan in Subarea C of the Westwood Valley Plan Development District to construct an office building and community center at Carmers Circle and Lancaster Drive. And item number 10 is a final development plan in Subarea C of the Westwood Valley Plan Development District to construct 3 multifamily apartment buildings at Carmers Circle and Lancaster Drive. Are there any objections to the audience for any items that are listed on the consent agenda? No? Seeing none, are there any objection from the Planning Commission members on any items listed on the consent agenda?
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is the first time I've ever been to any kind of...
Come forward, please. I'm going to ask you just to state your name for the record.
My name is Roseanne Johnston.
Okay, and Roseanne, what's your question?
I guess I have some questions on item 5, simply because this property is right next door to my home.
Okay.
And, you know, there's certain
Can you
issues
just hang on 1 minute? What we're going to do is we're going to pull this item off of the consent agenda, and it'll be the first item that we discuss when we get to the regular agenda. Okay? So go ahead and take a seat, and I'll ask you to come back up in a little bit. So we
Madam
have,
Chair,
yes,
I'd ask to be excused from the consent agenda.
sure. Commissioner Dunlap is going to step down from the consent agenda. And we're going to move item number 5 to the first item on the regular agenda. Okay, so I'll look for commission action on the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I make a recommendation. We approve the consent agenda with the removal of item 5 to the regular agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So the motion and the second to approve the items on the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, same sign. So the consent agenda, items on the consent agenda have now been approved. So any of you here with any items regarding the consent agenda, you are free to leave.
Except for item number
Okay?
5.
So, is there a motion to approve the regular agenda with item number 5 being moved to the first item?
Madam Chair, Steve Randall with the Planning Department. We have a request from the applicant for item 14 to defer their item for 30 days.
Okay. So we're moving item 5, and item number 14 will be deferred. So do we have a motion to approve the regular agenda with those changes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Same sign. Okay, regular agenda is approved. We'll start with item number 5. Do we have staff report?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Steve Randall with the Planning Department. I'll present this item and others this evening. Item 5 is a request from Larson Motors Select for a conditional use permit to be located at 3316 South Hawthorne, 3313 South Glendale, and 1820 West 41st Street. The purpose is to utilize a vacant and existing residential structure for motor vehicle display and sales. It is a developed area, and surrounding land uses include single-family residential in the RD residential district to the north, and C2 general commercial land uses to the south, east, and west. The southeast corner of this block will remain to be operated as a separate commercial business. Staff has identified a potential incompatibility simply because of the proximity of residential uses to this motor vehicle display and sales. That means that we would like to see conditions put on the or included in the application or put on the application that would make it more compatible in the neighborhood. The standards for conditional use permit motor vehicle display sales and rentals. Such uses shall be designed in a manner that encourages display toward the interior lot rather than towards the right-of-way for the majority of the inventory. And the petitioner should take particular care to provide landscaping around the lot and throughout the interior of the display area to minimize heat, dust, pollution, and glare. The applicant's site plan is before you this evening, indicating that existing structures on the west half of the block at this end have been removed. It is prepared and ready for construction. They are indicating that they will construct the minimum required setback and landscaping as required by the zoning ordinance for commercial development, including the trees, grass, landscaping in the front yard setback 10 feet, existing sidewalks to remain. There is a boulevard at this residential entrance into the neighborhood, but there's also a shared access to the parking lot on that side on Hawthorne. The applicant is indicating the use of an existing house structure, residential structure on the northeast corner of the lot to be used for the sales office. Also indicating the possibility of a detailing addition to that residential structure in the future. The applicant has indicated that they will probably, if that changes, would indicate that in their application. The required parking for the structures, including the addition, is shown along the north side of the lot with screening, fence screening against those residential properties. We've asked the petitioner to consider in the future, if that detailing shop does go in, that no openings in that structure be allowed to the north against the residential side, just because of the possible noise and activity with those detailing bays. Those would all face to the south. Otherwise, the plan is complete. Access has been reviewed and approved by the engineering department. Like I said, the existing commercial development at the southeast corner of the block is to remain, and that will be utilized for shared access to both properties. We did not have any calls from people in the neighborhood that I know of. We are recommending approval with two stipulations. One, that wall openings be prohibited on the north and west sides of any future detail bay addition shown on the plan. And two, that freestanding business signs are allowed along West 41st Street only. We would not like to get business signage back into the interior of the block. And that concludes staff report.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any questions of Steve? Okay, thank you. Is the petitioner here, please?
Hi, I'm Rich Larson.
Hi, Rich. You want to tell us a little bit about what you got going on?
Yes. If you guys recall, this was the property where the old John Shoe Repair used to be located. Behind that was an abandoned home. Also on this property was a deteriorated garage that was removed. We ended up working very, very hard to clean that up. We had asbestos testing done. We removed everything and pretty much eliminated some property that had not been taken care of for the last probably 3 to 4 years. It was willed to a family, and then they sold the property all in one piece at auction. So we intended to do, our intent with the property is basically clean it up, make it very nice and neat. We're pretty excited about the plan that has been presented in front of you. I think it'll be a very well done, high-end looking type of dealership. We will be very respectful to our neighbors. This fence that is dividing the property right now is very, very run down. And that is on the south side, all the way running across. So we intend to put up a very, very nice, clean new fence that would be be private to our neighbors and everything like that. So basically, they won't have, as much exposure to the new property or everything like that. We'll make it nicer. And that will be a shared fence with any of our neighbors, and we'll certainly comply with everything that the staff needs us to comply with. And I think it'll be a good-looking piece of property when we're finished with it. So.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Larson?
Madam Chair, Rich, what's on the corner there at 41st and Glendale? There says there's an existing, I can't quite read that.
Yeah, that's Z-Coil Footwear. We remodeled the old flower shop, if you remember that. And Z-Coil Footwear is another business that I own here in Sioux Falls, and I own another store in Rapid City. So we remodeled that property, and that's our Z-Coil Footwear store.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Rich? Thank you, Rich.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this item?
My name is Roseanne Johnston. My home is at 3309 South Glendale. It is right at the back of where the intended, business office to the auto is. And I guess I have just some questions pertaining to, one of them was partially answered as far as the fence. Because when we bought our property, Larry, I can't even remember his name, Peterson or whatever, the former owner of the flower shop, had been told by the city that he had to put up a privacy fence to separate the commercial from the residential. And it is in very bad repair, and we would hope that, that is going to be replaced, because I know my husband has had to put up posts to keep the fence up, kind of thing. And if it's going to have any kind of activity, like the bustling car dealership, then we would expect to have our privacy maintained with that. And another concern we have is one of the intended, when Mr. Larson visited with my husband, he mentioned that they were hoping to build maybe a garage so that they could, clean the cars, and if they needed any small repairs, that kind of thing, they'd be able to do that on site. And I guess the concern my husband had is when they create that garage, which way is the drainage going to go with that? Because it sounded like it was going to be plush to the fence, you know what I mean, right there, and it would drain. It would be right into our property as far as draining. So that's a major concern for us, because we had that concern with these heavy snowfalls kind of thing. And then the last concern I have is lighting, simply because seeing the other car lots in town, they have these really high lights that are very bright and what have you. What type of consideration can be given to that so that those lights do not fall directly into all of our windows that face south? Because that's our living room window, our bathroom window, and a bedroom window. And, that is a major concern of ours also. And those are the only issues that I wanted to address at this time.
Does anybody have any questions for Roseanne? No?
Roseanne? Does his assurance that he's going to do a new fence there kind of alleviate the fence issue for you?
I would hope, as he was saying, that it would be, he would make it very nice and what have you, that would be the case. But my main concern is privacy, total and absolute, because when they came in, they removed a tree that probably had a circumference, and I'm just guessing 6 foot circumference, and it was a huge shade tree. And then maybe the dilapidated garage was also, maybe it was in poor condition. But for us living right next door, they provided some kind of a sound barrier, and they provided, any kind of bright lights from 41st, and right now you feel as if, my bedroom is facing one of those windows that's going to be, coming into play. You feel as if you are actually on 41st Street with all of these little hot rodders, and those little Hondas that are all souped up, and the motorcycles. You feel like you are right on 41st Street with these vehicles literally ready to run you over. It caused a great noise situation for us.
Okay.
So, but the lighting is an issue, the drainage, if he builds that garage, that kind of thing. We don't want it all to fall into our property, kind of thing, because it is a very close, connection with where he's talking about.
You bet. You bet.
Thank you, Roseanne.
I'm going to ask Steve to come back and maybe clarify some of the questions that Roseanne has, and if those needs any further clarification, we'll ask Mr. Larson to come back.
Sure. As far as the drainage is concerned, the existing house is set back 5 feet from the property line for drainage. The addition that they're showing on there lines up with that house. However, we've indicated to the petitioner that because it is zoned commercial next to a residential lot, they have to have a greater setback, which would be 10 feet. That would provide more opportunity for treating the drainage situation. If they could go to the Board of Adjustment and request a variance to line up with the existing structure, but at that time I'm sure that the Board of Adjustment would verify the fact that they have adequate drainage to allow that. As far as lighting is concerned, if they do provide additional lighting on the property, they have to meet the city lighting ordinance requirements, which controls any spilling of light out onto adjacent properties. That should take care of it. As far as the sound is concerned, if it's a solid fence, it should be work just as well as it did before, and probably better if the old fence was in bad condition. The tree, I couldn't say, if that would affect the sound situation as much. I suppose it does. The addition of another tree that size, of course, would not be practical, but other sound control measures are possible through additional landscaping. Staff did not research that aspect of the property because the residential properties are so close to 41st Street now. I think that covers most of the questions.
Thank you, Steve.
Madam Chair? Steve? With a conditional use permit, this will be our last opportunity to look at this particular plan.
That's correct.
If we wanted to add a stipulation about a fence, would that be out of line, or what's customary between commercial and residential? Is that a 6-foot privacy fence?
Currently, the applicant is indicating a 6-foot solid wood fence. The ordinance would require only a 5-foot-high solid fence, screen fence, next to the parking lot. If the parking lot is within 2 feet of the property line, the fence is allowed. It has to be 5 feet high. If the parking lot were 5 feet away, then you could use landscaping to provide that screening or that buffer. I think as far as noise control is concerned, you would probably not be able to put any landscaping in that would be effective for another 5 years probably.
When you talk about customary lighting, is that the box-type lighting that shines down? Is that what the city requires on?
We call it shoebox-style lighting,
Shoebox.
where the light is directed straight down. And then the photometric plan that the zoning and building services requires for a building permit would evaluate how far out that light does shine and at what foot candle it does shine at on the surface next to it.
But to get a permit, they have to meet that
They
criteria.
have to meet that criteria, that's correct.
Thank you, Steve.
Do we have any other questions? Come on back, Rich. Maybe you can clear up some of Roseanne's concerns
Thank you,
as well.
yes, and I'm glad Rosie stopped by. I did have an opportunity to visit with Rosie's husband and visit with him a little bit about our intention. So I'm glad that she came this evening and everything like that. Certainly our first and foremost thing when I saw the situation and what my intent and plans were was to notice that rundown fence. That certainly did make a difference, and one of the things that I did mention is we will not only put up that fence to be up to code and standard, but I will cooperate with Rosie. Let's do this together. Let's make sure that you're satisfied with what I intend to put up. I'd be very, very glad to cooperate with you on that. So that would be my first intent, is to make sure that her concerns are 100% satisfied. I'm sorry about taking the tree down. However, that tree was tangled in a bunch of electrical lines. I mean, completely engulfed in those. It found to be a fire hazard, is what we were told when we were destructing some buildings and things like that. So we really had no choice but to continue on with our plans to remove the tree. Once we do put the garage up, her concern with our building, certainly that will provide some privacy, and we just want our neighbors Rosie to understand that this will not be a loud hammering, working on cars type of repair shop. This will be just something where in the 40 below weather I have some place to put a vehicle inside to wash or to get warm or jump start or something like that. So it's not going, our service department will continue to be over on Kiwanis Avenue where it presently is right now. But this is just some place that we can basically, in the cold weather, have a place to park a few cars. So with the height of that and everything like that, I think we can provide our neighbors much more privacy than what they're dealing with right now. And we're anxious to do that because I definitely want to make this a very, very nice piece of property. It's a dream of mine to be on 41st Street as a lifelong resident of the community here. This is something that our family can't believe that we actually have the opportunity to own such a beautiful piece of property. And we want to make Sioux Falls definitely as nice as we possibly can. I think this is a nice improvement for this property. The buildings were terrible. They were infested with insects. They were infested with many, many things, I guess, that that abandoned buildings can happen over this period of time. Lastly, the lighting. The photometric lighting is something that Rosie probably, I totally understand what she has concerns is. But that lighting you pay quite a bit of money for, but it's pretty much regulated by the city, as Steve said. It's photometric lighting, so it just shoots directly down. Also, I won't be adding a ton of additional lighting where our sales office is and where Rosie's property is. That will not require a ton of lighting. It'll be further over. So we intend to keep that particular area. There's no reason to have a bunch of lighting on our neighbor's property whatsoever. I mean, to affect her at all. She should really notice no intrusion of light whatsoever, because I mean, there's no reason to do that. So I hope that answers any questions or concerns. I want to do this with her, so she feels very, very comfortable in what we're doing. Anyway.
Rich, if I can.
Yes.
If we were to add a stipulation that you would agree to put a privacy fence up along her property, would you have a problem with that?
I have no problem with that. In fact, I was pretty much intending to do that anyway. Ken, when I started to do it, I said, hey, fence is coming down, here's what my plan is. But definitely we want to be a good neighbor and make this a better situation for everybody in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Rich.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I'll look for commission action on item.
Madam Chair, I'd move for approval of item number 5 with 2 stipulations. I would not like to add a third stipulation that Rich would agree to put a 6-foot privacy fence along the north boundary.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of item number 5 with the 3 stipulations signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, same sign. Item number 5 carries. Item number 11 is our next item.
Item 11 is a rezoning petition that was deferred at the last Planning Commission meeting until tonight to allow time for the applicant and the neighbors to come to an agreement as to how the rezoning could proceed. Staff was approached by the applicant shortly after the meeting to determine if staff had anything to suggest as to agreements that could be drawn up between the neighbors and the applicant to satisfy the concerns that they might have. And as was mentioned at the public hearing, staff does not get involved in private agreements, either in formulating or enforcing private agreements. Other than that, the alternatives are indicated in the compatibility rating that you have included in the report, which is 1. We give it a high incompatibility rating, which says that the new district, as we see it, is incompatible with the adjacent land uses, and development proposal requires a planned unit development and extensive documentation to prove that external effects are fully mitigated. In this situation, it's such a small lot that for an industrial type use, which is a commercial rental property, the required setback, screening, fencing, landscaping, and so on probably could not be met. Therefore, staff still considers the use to be incompatible with the neighborhood and recommends denial of the application. I believe that the applicant was continuing to work through an attorney with the neighbors to arrive at some sort of agreement that they would present to you this evening. And that concludes staff report.
Any questions of Steve?
Madam Chair, I've asked to be excused from this particular item.
You bet. Commissioner Dunlap is stepping down for item number 11. Are there any other questions of Steve? No. Is the petitioner here, please? Good evening, Mr. Weber. Last month, we had the opportunity to hear the majority of the history behind this piece of property, so maybe at this point you can just bring us up to speed on where we're at this evening.
Okay. Well, last time when we adjourned, you had said if we could come up with maybe a reliable or resolvable solution to this problem. So what I did is I had told you that I had been working through Aaron Emerson, an attorney here in town, and what he did is drew up a claim deed that is going with to go with the property. And what I'd like to do is if Steve could hand that out, and I highlighted, and also here is one copy of all. What I did is the attorney Aaron had drew up the quitclaim deed and did it as an Exhibit A, and I walked the neighborhood and petitioned all 16 neighbors is what I did, and they all got a copy of the exhibit. They read through the quitclaim deed. I guess I'll wait till some of you get that to see what it states. In the highlighted area there is what is being stated as what I felt was the most concerning issue, that it would be limited to personal storage use only.
Okay?
Okay. So what I did is I walked the neighborhood, went out numerous times, got a hold of basically 14 out of the 16 owners of the property. The only two that I did not get a hold of was the residents at 105. I did have the renter sign it. I thought, well, if there was any objections to that. Abizrat Yet Barrick owns the property. Her address, she lives over on Foss. I went into her personal residence. I've talked to someone there, very limited English speaking. She said that she was out of country, no longer in country. So I have no way to get a hold of her. On 114 South Elmwood, no signatures. David and Cheryl Purung own that property. They live on Sheffield Circle. I've been over there 10 plus times. Never could catch anyone home, never could catch a renter home. On the address of 115, the renter did sign it. Steve Barnett owns it. He's from Minneapolis. I talked to him a couple times on the phone. He works for the State Parks Department up there. He was a little busy the last couple days, and then he has no computer. So he was traveling and says when I get back, he would definitely sign it, that he would give the okay. And at 129 Elmwood, the daughter signed. She lives there now. She's doing a transfer deed with her father of property. She's doing a property swap.
Okay.
So basically 14 out of the 16 said yes. I had no objections. They all said I've taken care of the property very well. They were very happy with what I had used it for, and that they were all happy that I would continue to use it that way, and if I did sell it, that they would be protected for personal use only.
Okay, good enough. Are there any questions of Mr. Weber? No? Seeing none? So Ron, you have this, I have a question for you. So we have this quitclaim deed. Should we agree to your request this evening? I think our request needs to be contingent upon the filing of the deed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if there's, I would make that if, should we choose to approve the rezoning, I would have a recommendation or a stipulation that the approval is subject to the quitclaim deed being filed at the courthouse.
Yep.
And you are amenable to that?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, Aaron said if we would come upon some agreements tonight, he should be able to have that done within 2 to 3 business days.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Is anybody from the audience here to speak on this item? No? So
Question for staff.
Yes.
If I may, one of the things on the stipulation, of course, according to our ordinance, we can't put stipulations or conditions for approval on rezonings. What you can recommend, though,
Okay.
is that the quitclaim deed be filed prior to going to the council, and that would help the application when it does get to a public hearing with the council. But that would be a recommendation to the applicant only. That would certainly, if it's filed before it gets to the council, then the council would not be in the same situation where they have to try to approve something subject to something that they really can't do.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions of Steve?
Steve, Madam Chair, has the city's attorney seen this at all? Or is
No,
this
they
just
haven't.
something that's just come up tonight? That this is the first opportunity that anybody's had to see this is tonight?
Oh, this is the first opportunity that anybody has seen what they're proposing tonight, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff Schmidt, representing city staff. But again, as Steve mentioned, you can proceed forward with this item because we do have that time between tonight and city council to vet and review any of these issues.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any other questions on item number 11? I'll look for commission action on item number 11, please.
I'll make a motion because this proposed zoning isn't compatible with the adjacent residential zoning. I feel that it should be denied.
Okay. Do we have a second for denial?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second for denial of item number 11. All those in favor signify by...
Now
do we-
now discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to
Okay.
discuss this a little bit.
Sure.
Again, it's so incompatible. I know that they said that this can be filed before the city gets this. I guess I'm still not, I still don't feel comfortable putting light commercial in a residential area, even with this. Again, our city attorneys have not seen anything yet. He has a chance to file it yet.
I agree. There's no legal opinion as to whether this is valid or not.
Sure.
So I'm not comfortable with approving light industrial for that area. It's a residential neighborhood.
But is it that where the time frame of the review comes in prior to going to city council would be effective?
There is appropriate time for review, and I think this is an interesting piece of property in an interesting neighborhood in somewhat of, I think, a transition. There is commercial property relatively close to this, and it's limited to personal storage. So indeed, it couldn't. I think the example of a welding shop was brought up last month. It's not going to be a welding shop tomorrow. It's not going to be a welding shop if this deed is filed, ever, because it's a permanent restriction on the piece of property, that it's used for personal, non-commercial, personal storage. That would be my...
I agree. Do we know that it's permanent?
Yeah, do we
Well-
know that? Because our city attorneys have not said that this is a legal binding contract yet.
What's to stop him from doing another quitclaim deed down the road to change that?
And I think, again, there's the opportunity for the attorneys, city attorneys, to take a look at this. And if they have a problem, they certainly have the opportunity to appear at the council meeting and say, no, and then it'll come back to us and we can take a look at it again. But there are those few situations where we end up with strange zoning situations for whatever matter, and I certainly understand the position of the city that they feel it's an incompatible zoning. I completely understand that. I don't just think the world's always black and white. So,
Madam Chair,
yeah, Denny.
as the youngest and most green member of this commission,
Yes.
if the council decides that we will deny this request, the petitioner still can go to the city council. Is that correct?
No, if we deny it,
That's the
cannot
end
come
of it?
back before us for it would go to the city council with a denial. They could reverse it at the council.
What I'm thinking is that if we deny it and they take that next step in the process, then they'll have time to do what they were suggesting they do and get this thing through the process of the lawyers, get the quick claim deed. And not that we have to pass the buck, but the city council then would be the final step.
Certainly is an option as well.
I mean, it's still alive then if they choose to take it to that next level, correct?
My understanding, yes.
Okay.
Okay. All discussion is closed. All public testimony is closed. So we have a motion and a second for denial on item number 11. All those in favor of denial signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed signify by saying yes.
Yes.
So we have 5 recommending denial and 1 recommending approval. Okay. So item number 11 is denied. It will be carried over to the council meeting, and Mr. Weber, go ahead and meet with, you can get with the city and they can give you some direction. Okay. Item number 12.
Item 12 is a request for a conditional use permit. You've seen this property before when it came to you for rezoning, and the rezoning was not on the subject property. It was on a little piece of a lot that adjacent to the subject property, and Dave just kind of outlined it in red there on the screen for you. The subject property this evening does not include that little piece that was denied for rezoning. So the proposed use is allowed in the zoning on the subject property as identified. The applicant is David Fisher for Buell Consulting. Sam Assam for Brankevco is representing the owner. And the request is to allow construction of a tower, a telecommunications tower, and accessory structures. The address is given as 701 to 705 South Minnesota Avenue, lots 4, 4A, 5, and the east 40 feet of lot 12, block 1, Lewis Edition. And that's simply because there is a conditional use on that existing 40 by 40 piece for commercial parking at the present time. We've given it a compatibility rating of 3. There is a potential incompatibility because of the proximity of residential property in the neighborhood to this commercial use. The conditional use permit standards are identified in your staff report as referring to design character, screening, and fencing, typical of telecommunication facility installations here in town. We have a number of precedents, of course, and some of you have acted on those in the past. If you have any questions on those, I can hopefully answer. I believe the neighbor next to the application subject property also has some slides that they would like to present on typical installations here in town as well. The existing corridor development pattern is urban streetcar commercial. There was a Minnesota Avenue development corridor study that presented this section of Minnesota Avenue as typical of streetcar commercial. That is pedestrian type activity, a lot of commercial redevelopment, and so on. Telecommunications is an important aspect of commercial redevelopment, of course. As you're aware, we want to have improved service if we can, and maintain that level of service, and that's what the applicant is proposing to do. The applicant is also proposing to locate the tower to meet the setback requirements, both from the residential property and from the public street as required by the ordinance. They've indicated that they do that, and it's indicated on the site plan that was initially presented, and you see on the screen before you, which included as well some landscaping and some fence screening to address the conditional use requirements. The stealth requirements of the pole design are also presented. At that time, staff noted to them that the entire property was not identified on the application exhibit. We requested a new exhibit, which they did provide, but we did not get into the package of information that was provided to the commissioners, and we're presenting that to you this evening. The entire property is shown on the screen before you, and all of the setbacks, required setbacks, and so on are presented. However, the landscaping is not evident on this particular drawing of the proposed development. What they are proposing instead is solid wood screen fencing of the air conditioning units on the equipment building and around the base of the tower. That is all that they are proposing, and it does address the requirements of the conditional use permit standards of screening the base of the tower, screening the equipment, and meeting the setback requirements. Anything in addition to that that is either proposed by neighbors or that you suggest this evening would have to be added to recommendation for approval as additional stipulations. Staff is recommending approval, and we are also indicating that it refers to the new plan that is presented this evening. And we have no stipulations on there because they did attempt to and did provide the required documents that we requested from them. As I say, the only thing different was that the initial application included some landscaping. This one does not. We do have a neighbor that came to the rezoning hearing as well, would like to address you this evening. They gave us some slides to include on our projection system. We have those available as they make their presentation. Also in the addendum to tonight's meeting, to this report, you have in front of you a letter from that neighbor that indicates concerns that they have on landscaping, screening, and setback. That concludes staff report.
Any questions of Steve?
Yes, Madam Chair. My eyes aren't what they used to be, and I'm sorry I can't see all the small print here. What's the height of the tower?
100 feet.
100 feet.
Yes.
Thank you.
Denny, I feel your pain. Could you put that last picture back up, David? Could you show me where the that bump out is to the west that was allowed for parking under conditional use that we rezoned?
He put a red line around it.
Thank you. Steve, would you replay back for me why the petitioner came back and asked to rezone that conditional use permit for parking to have it zoned commercial?
The request was to allow the equipment building for the tower to be placed closer to the residential uses than what would be allowed if it stayed residential zoning. By rezoning it to commercial, this rear yard setback was reduced for that equipment. Apparently, the owner of the property would like to have that equipment placed as close as possible to the west property line.
Didn't affect where the tower itself went.
Did not affect where the tower is located because that's set by the height of the tower to the required rear yard setback line of the residential property.
So the plan that was represented to you, to staff, and to us, this is how it's going to be built.
As it's presented to you this evening, in order to get it built exactly the way that it's presented, you would have to make that a stipulation for approval. Otherwise, as long as they meet the requirements of the ordinance, it could be done a little differently.
Thank you.
Steve, one more question, please. I'm sorry, I was thinking of something else when you were talking about the landscaping. You said it's not on this application, but it was on the original one.
Yes.
Does that mean it's just being eliminated, or it just didn't show up on here?
As far as I understand, they are not proposing any additional landscaping.
But the original landscaping, though, was towards the Minnesota side street side. Okay, that was towards Minnesota Avenue originally, so it wasn't back towards the resident area anyway. Okay.
Any additional questions of Steve? Thank you, Steve. Is the petitioner here, please?
Good evening, Sam Assam here on behalf of Brent Kevco. I'd like to start out by doing a little bit of clarification. I was not called to be here on the first meeting on the rezoning. The sole purpose of that rezoning was, it was our understanding, and when it was explained to us, is that Verizon is overburdened on their system right now, experiencing drop calls and so forth. And so they were in a hurry to get this done. They showed up, selected this site, and what we were trying to do on the rezoning, as Steve was correct, was to move it back. The rezoning, originally, what we were going to do with the building was try to move it actually further back so it wouldn't be as obtrusive on the commercial site for future redevelopment. That was the purpose. That's why the original rezoning got done. However, as it started to develop, Verizon said no. We submitted the application for rezoning. Verizon said no, we will not cross under another utility line. And Excel, going north and south there, has some pretty major utility lines crossing there. So that's, as Paul Harvey would say, is the rest of the story on that. That's how the whole thing got started. This site, as you're probably aware, has been utilized as a used automobile sales lot. The tower itself cannot be moved further back. This in spite of the fact that Verizon was proposing to have a collapsible tower that would break at 50 feet and therefore would not endanger striking any of the residential homes on that. So that was where it was at. The landowner, like I say, was trying to maintain flexibility. There has been some negotiations with fast food outlets on this, but nothing has transpired at this point. So just trying to maintain flexibility on the lot. The building itself is proposed by Verizon. No, there's no landscaping on the back, nor is there on any of the existing commercial buildings along there. The whole corridor, you're staring into the back of concrete walls. This building is not dissimilar from the existing structures that are on there, with the exception of the fact that it's actually pulled closer towards the street because of the denial and the requirement of the setback. So the tower, it's where it has to be. We had little direction on that. I mean, we had to go by current city ordinances, so that just can't be moved. Landscaping it, most of the towers of this type, stealth towers, they simply look like a large flagpole, and you're probably all familiar with them. You've seen them on 69th in front of Mr. Lloyd's office building over there. You've seen them on the 229 corridor, and I know that's a sensitive area. And there is no screening or sheltering or landscaping on that. They simply look like a large flagpole. So, happy to answer any questions.
Madam Chair, Rich, I think what you're saying is that through negotiations with Verizon, what we see is where everything's going to end up being.
On that current one, that is correct.
So if we added a stipulation tower and accessory building to be built as presented, you would not have a problem with that?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm going to add one other. I noticed that when I read the letter and then I happened to go out the east side of town and saw the one that he was talking about on southeastern, would it make a difference of a white fence versus a wood fence?
It would stick out more. It would be my only thought, but that's personal preference.
That was my thought too. It would stick out more. I'm just thinking of what the landowner, the resident behind there was requesting a white fence versus a solid wood fence.
As part of the requirement when the conditional use was granted for the automotive sales, because Brinkevco also owns the residence along Spring Avenue, immediately the back, and so there's already a wooden fence in there anyway. So there's a 6-foot wooden fence in there already, privacy fence.
So it'd be something similar to matching that then?
I think so.
Okay.
I think anything else would kind of look a little odd. Again, personal opinion, but if you get a cedar fence and then you got a white vinyl one, it kind of clashes, but that's personal input on that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, you bet. Anything else?
Any other questions, Sam? Thank you, Sam.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else from the audience here to speak on this item? State your name, sir.
Yeah, my name is Jack Leninger. I own the property at 728 South Spring Avenue, which is west and to the south of the proposed conditional use permit and is directly south of 708 South Spring. The area from the railroad tracks on Spring Avenue to 16th Street is presently zoned RD residential. The proposed conditional use of the property directly east of 708 South Spring is a subject property that you're evaluating here tonight.
Jack, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. We all got this in our addendum, so we have read it, and we are all familiar with this information as well. So it is in the record. So if you want to add anything in addition to what you've already stated in here, that's terrific. But I think we're pretty clear on what you're asking. Or if you can maybe put that into a nutshell.
Well, if you don't want to have me read that part into the record or expound on it, then that's fine. I'll have to go into the remarks then that Mr. Assam made. They are not proposing any additional landscaping at this time. He speaks about the wooden fence that's back there in that 44 by 44 piece that's already got a conditional use permit on it for parking. And if anybody goes over there and takes a look at that, it is not a nice-looking fence. There's parts of the top that are broke off. If you look at the south side of the fence that goes alongside my property, it's loose, it's not straight, it's bowed over because it hasn't been kept up, and that's the kind of fence that they're talking about putting around this facility also. Comment was made that the white vinyl fence that is around the property out there on Southeastern would be out of place in this area. I totally disagree with that. I think it would be a lot nicer looking than a old wooden fence that's going to deteriorate with weather, and when they get old they start looking shabby and brown. Could we put that Southeastern, not the flagpole, but the fence itself? This is the one that's up there at Southeastern. It makes it look very nice in that commercial area. There's a shopping center to the left when you look at the building. And if you look at the next picture, I believe, that fence coming around it fits in very well with the facade of the commercial area and the buildings there, and it wouldn't be looking out of place anymore out there on Minnesota Avenue than it does right here. I think that you'd have a lot better eye appeal from the Minnesota Avenue side as well as from the residential side to have that kind of a fence up there than to have a wooden fence up, because I know how that's deteriorated over the last few years on the one that's right next to my property. Further, there's an elevation difference between the property on the west side of the proposed conditional use permit. So you're up in the air looking down, more or less down onto that parking lot, and they could just as well use that 44 by 44, put the dirt back in there and have a berm put in with some nice landscaping on it, which would just about block that whole thing from the residential side. And that would be a lot better use for that area than be having it set up for parking back there in our backyards anyway. So that's why we were recommending that they put in the berm and put the white fence around it, because I think it'd be a lot better eye appeal from the residential side as well as from the commercial side of Minnesota Avenue. And we respectfully request that you give serious consideration to that tonight.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any questions for Jack?
I'd like to thank Jack for coming up tonight. I know you were here last month. I felt your pain. I'm feeling better knowing where that building's going to set. I think you and I kind of felt that maybe they were doing that to get that building back in that particular area. That's not the case, and that's a stipulation I'm going to make tonight. I'm going to support it. I'm not sure how everybody else might feel about a fence, Jack, but appreciate your coming up and talking.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Jack? No. Thank you, Jack. Anybody else from the audience care to speak on this item? Sam, I have a question. Go ahead. Were you going to come on up? Why don't you come first, Mr. Verizon? Why don't you come forward? Go ahead, state your name, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Dave Fisher with Buell Consulting on behalf of Dakota Systems Incorporated, doing business as Verizon Wireless. I guess just in response to Jack's comment, I kind of feel that the white fence sticks out more so than a wood fence or even an earth tone colored fence. The stone aggregate building that we're proposing is brown in color, so just trying to be consistent with what's there rather than it kind of sticking out, trying to have it blend in is the best possible. So understanding its concerns, but I just wanted to make that point that I think an earth tone color, if it was to change from a wood fence, would be better than white.
Do you have a problem making it a vinyl fence as opposed to I think what he's saying is a cedar fence he sees as a long-term maintenance issue. I don't want to speak for him, but a vinyl fence he sees as less maintenance over the long run. Would there be an issue putting a vinyl fence in as opposed to?
I don't believe that Verizon Wireless would. I'd also want to consult with Sam.
Brown vinyl fence, but the tower itself is going to be. The tower itself is, unlike the pictures that he was showing, this is going to be one of those darker ones to blend in more with that commercial environment.
Okay.
So yeah, I think a brown, similarly colored fence would make it more disappear. So I'm sure the landowner wouldn't have.
So if we would stipulate to that,
sure.
You don't think there'd be a problem?
And just to clarify, that's just for the two wood fences proposed, correct? The one on the east side surrounding the HVAC units and the one at the base of the pole, as proposed on the plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, we're not talking about the fence that's existing.
Yep, just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Okay?
Yes, I think that would be suitable for both Verizon Wireless and the landowner.
Okay. Any other questions for Sam or Dave? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Jack, does that help you a little bit?
My hearing is bad. I didn't understand if
Sure.
you're talking about a wooden fence now or a brown vinyl.
No, it would be a vinyl fence.
Okay.
or If we have a stipulation to that
Okay.
they would not be opposed to a brown or a tan vinyl fence
Okay,
as they show fencing in the existing drawing.
okay.
Okay?
Then that resolves that part of the issue. The other part would be, can you put that back up for Dave on that southeastern one? Where they had the berm? The other shot, another one. That one. If you look at that, you can see when you're looking at it from the residential side over there, with that berm in there, it does block from the window level of those houses, all but the very top of that building. And that's what I was talking about putting in over there so that we wouldn't have that whole thing just sticking right out there in the residential area. You could have that berm put in there, you could block part of that view of that thing, because like I said, you've got an elevation difference between the parking lot where this thing is going in and the residential area to the west. So the residential area is going to be looking down on it. So even if you put a fence, 6-foot fence up from the area that you're looking down from the residential side, you're still going to be looking down onto that thing.
Okay.
Where if you have the berm in there like this, it blocks a lot of that area so that you don't have the problem of obtrusive buildings and fencing down below the residential area.
Thank you, Jack.
And Jack, just so you're understanding that this is not replacing the existing fence. They're not replacing that. They're only putting up one as
I
shown
wish
on
they
the
would
drawing.
replace the existing fence. It's a piece of junk.
So, just so that you understand that they're just putting the fence up where it shows on the
Just
existing
putting it around
drawing.
there. I'm talking about the berm that could be
Right.
put in there in that area to do just like they did right here.
Yeah.
And that would give you a lot better buffer, and it would also deflect a lot of the noise away from the residential area too, and if they should have to run those generators.
Okay.
Madam Chair? Jack, I think that horse left the barn a long time ago. I don't know how you'd ever come back there to do something like that now. I don't know if there's enough room to try and build what you kind of envision there.
Wouldn't be hard to dump a bunch of dirt in there and make that back to what it was.
Thank you, Jack. Anybody else that would like to speak on item number 12? Okay, I'll look for commission action on item number 12.
Madam Chair, I'd move for approval of item number 12 with one stipulation. I'd like to add two stipulations. Tower and accessory building to be built as presented to us this evening. That'd be number 2. Number 3, a solid vinyl fence, Tanner Brown, to be used.
Kenny, the first stipulation, from what I understand, has been removed. So yours would be stipulation 1 and 2.
Thank you.
That's Kenny's motion. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. We have discussion on item number 12. No? All those in favor of item number 12 signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, same side. Item number 12 carries with 2 stipulations. Item number 13.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is David Loveland, and I'll be representing planning staff on this and one other item this evening. Item number 13 is a conditional use permit in the RA2 residential district to construct an off-site accessory parking lot. The applicant is requesting approval of this conditional use permit in order to expand the parking lot to the west of the current site. The applicant is Chris Pappas, and the owner is Edward Villasovic. The general location is at 1914 South Spring Avenue on the rear half of that lot, and the area in question is about a fifth of an acre in size. The existing land use is currently single-family residential, and the abutting zoning and land uses that we would be considering to the north is RA2 residential, to the south is RA2 residential, to the east is C2 general commercial, and to the west is RD residential. The lowest compatibility ratings are to the south and to the west with compatibility ratings of 3. The conditional use permit standard for accessory parking on-site and off-site is on-site parking shall be in conformance with Chapter 1555. The off-site parking should be located within a reasonable distance of the use it is intended to serve. Natural or man-made barriers and travel safety between the sites should be considered. The parking must be restricted by a written instrument of record, and the instrument must be in a form acceptable to the director and contain the number of spaces under lease and a statement assuring retention of these spaces for a period specified by the Planning Commission, however not less than a year. Now, that standard is in relation to leased parking. I believe the owner is the owner of both sites, and so that does not necessarily apply in this instance. As I noted, the location is at 1914 South Spring Avenue, which is directly behind the Bagel Boy on South Minnesota Avenue. Existing corridor development pattern is classified as a major arterial with development pattern of urban streetcar commercial. South Spring Avenue is classified as a local residential street. The proposal includes a direct access from South Spring Avenue to the parking lot that would drive through to South Minnesota Avenue. And the staff does not support commercial access onto local residential streets, including in this instance on South Spring Avenue, and that's the opinion of both the planning office and the engineering department as we try to limit the impacts of commercial development on residential streets. The conditional use plan, parking lots must be 2 feet from the property line if screened. The applicant is showing a 6-foot privacy fence on the provided site plan, which would allow them to build up to 2 feet onto both of the side yards, both on the south and on the north side. The proposed parking lot shows 12 additional stalls, and the site plan does not show where the parking for the single-family structure will be located. That is an issue for that house right there. With the removal of the garage that's in the rear, that is their required parking, and so they would have to have 2 additional stalls located on-site outside of the front yard setback in order to be able to meet the parking requirement for that single-family structure. And I'm not sure, they haven't indicated where that would be located then on site. To get into the analysis of the application, in the fall of 2010, planning staff initiated a study group of the Minnesota Avenue corridor. The study group's report was heard and accepted by the Planning Commission in November of 2010. The sections of Minnesota Avenue were broken into four specific areas defined by their major characteristics. This section of Minnesota, as with the last application that you just heard, from West 14th to West 33rd Street, is classified as the campus section, relating to the medical and institutional campus uses located near the corridor. The study group report envisioned the eventual redevelopment of portions of Minnesota in block sections along the west side of the arterial. The study group relied on Chapter 6 of the Shape Sioux Falls 2035 Comprehensive Plan. In that chapter, the plan states the following. Minnesota Avenue from downtown to 37th Street has the most intact corridor left in the city. In areas with some streetcar development, some types of vertical mixed use or similar streetcar redevelopment should be encouraged. Also, streetcar corridor should be encouraged to minimize impacts to adjacent residential developments. Corridor overlay districts are encouraged along these areas to develop a variety of toolkits for mixed use and appropriate conventional redevelopment within the streetcar context. While staff recognizes the potential for future development or enhancement of this entire block from Minnesota to Spring and from West 27th to West 20th Street, staff is concerned about the long-term impact of commercial uses moving further to the west across that half-block section without a comprehensive plan for redevelopment. While the granting of the conditional use permit will leave the site within the RA2 residential district, the commercial nature of the proposed parking lot is apparent, and staff is unable to recommend approval at this time without transitions being in place or concepts of eventual block redevelopment being presented to ensure that traffic, parking, and other external effects are directed away from lower intensity land uses and noted by the compatibility rating scale provided by the comprehensive plan. We have received two comments from neighbors in this section. One neighbor was in support of the application, and another came in yesterday to express opposition to the application. And because the application may set a precedent by expanding commercial functions into the residential neighborhood along South Spring Avenue, and comprehensive block redevelopment should occur in conjunction with a larger development proposal, staff is recommending denial of the conditional use permit. Should the Planning Commission choose to approve the permit, staff recommends 4 stipulations, including no access. The first one, no access to South Spring Avenue. The second one would be to provide 2 on-site parking stalls for the existing single-family structure. The third would be any lighting utilized shall be downcast with no spillover onto surrounding properties. And the fourth would be that required fence shall surround the parking lot expansion and be composed of vinyl materials. And that concludes staff report.
Thank you, Dave. Are there any questions of Dave on item number 13?
Madam Chair. Dave, this one confuses me. In the issue we just had right before this one, and there was a conditional use permit granted, I can't remember when, to create some off-street parking for the car lot, the 700 block of Minnesota Avenue. And I realized that was done before the study was done. And yet, a month ago, even in regards to this study, staff was supporting changing that conditional use permit to a commercial usage. And I'm trying to justify in my mind how that jives, that one versus this one.
Well, I think that's a good comment. I think one of the concerns of staff on this application is that because we had already granted the conditional use permit several years ago for that application, the commercial nature was already apparent and functioning. And so in this case, what we're trying to do is prevent the expansion of the commercial use across that half block into the residential district. And the support of that is explained by both the Shape Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan and by the Minnesota Avenue Redevelopment Study, which have both occurred within the last 2 years. And so I think that what that highlights is that the city is interested in redevelopment along Minnesota Avenue, but we don't want to do it in little pieces. We'd like to see larger proposals to allow for evaluation of how we limit the impacts of that commercial redevelopment into the residential districts.
So when I look at First Premier, and they take their parking all the way back to Spring, you've justified that by saying, hey, they took a half block and we're not piecemealing it.
Right.
I think Core Trust Bank, I think, has done the same thing.
I think there are several examples, and then there are examples of things where, you know, we would encourage similar types of redevelopment, you know, that have occurred in the past, where they've buffered, you know, utilizing landscaping or fencing, along that entire half block. What would happen in this case is we've got a 60 by 66 foot parcel, and we don't know exactly how that would interplay with any potential redevelopment in the future, or what that effect would have on the ability to redevelop in the future then. And so in the past, when we've had those applications move across that half block, we've evaluated those as they existed to that specific site.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions of Dave? No? Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Is the petitioner here, please?
Evening, Chris Pappas, 1913 South Minnesota Avenue. I'm here to request approval of a conditional use permit for a parking lot on the east half of 1914 South Spring. The reason for the parking lot, and my intentions are just keeping it as a parking lot, is the existing businesses need it desperately. I want to build a parking lot that will be engineered to drain onto the existing 1911 South Minnesota Avenue property, curb and gutter, 6-foot vinyl fence, meet all the stipulations that they requested, with the exception of access to Spring Avenue, because the access to Spring Avenue is crucial because the tenant parking for 1914 South Spring would be in the expanded parking lot, so they would have to have access through the parking lot to get to parking spaces, because the building that was there and currently is there is not a garage. It's a garage that's been converted to living quarters, so it was never used as garage space for the tenants. Actually, it was 2 rentals on the same property. And I really don't think you're going to see a lot of traffic using that Spring Avenue exit from the bagel shop onto Spring, simply because if you notice that you have to go over and then up and then over to get out. And most cars want an easy out. I mean, I'm not saying it's never going to get used by the consumer visiting those businesses, but chances are that those people that leave the bagel shop typically go out South Minnesota. If they're going north on Minnesota and they leave in the morning, they're probably going out to Minnesota or down to 27th, over to Spring, up to 26th Street, over to the traffic light anyway, so they're using Spring. I'm not saying all of them do, but during the morning traffic where you can't cross to go northbound on Minnesota, a lot of people are already doing that, using Spring as access to 26th and then Minnesota Avenue. I drive up and down Spring Avenue and I notice parking lots up and down the street on Spring. I want to be a good neighbor. I'm not here to upset anyone. Really would entertain any questions?
Any questions of Chris?
Chris, as you heard from the staff report, allowing that would set a precedent, for turning residential into a commercial piece of property.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a hesitation to
Right.
go for that.
Right.
Do you not have any other options to the north or south that
I've
would-
tried for years to get the property to the north, and I wish, quite frankly, that I could buy more property, but it's just I'm small. I can't go in and make very appealing offers to people to buy their property. Eventually I will, and I mean, I don't want to sound like it's going to happen, but eventually I do own most of the block on Minnesota Avenue. As pieces do come available, I will purchase them if I'm able to, and then ultimately would like to redevelop the whole block, but it won't be something that probably would be within the next 20 years.
Chris, do you kind of see where staff's coming from on this
Oh,
deal?
yeah, I understand.
I
understand.
I'd like to support you, but I got to kind of support staff on this deal.
Perfect.
That exiting off into Spring, it's a heck of a business there. I go by it every morning. When my dietitian will let me, I go in, I get some of that stuff. But it's a full lot. It's
Right.
a thriving business there, and I feel your pain. but I can kind of see where they're coming from just a little bit. Where do you start? Where do you stop?
No problem. I respect that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Chris,
Yes, sir.
we've known each other for quite a few years.
Okay.
He hired my daughter to work at Bagel Boys. Actually, both of my daughters to work at Bagel Boys. And should I tell him about Lindler, or should I just leave that?
That's going way back.
He used to work with my wife in the pharmacy at Round Park. I guess I'd like you to restate why you would object to not having that access to Spring Avenue. I mean, it would appear that if we're to pass this, we would want to put some stipulations, number one being no access to South Spring. Well, what are you hung up on that for? Why are you hung up?
I need somewhere for the tenants that live in the home to be able to park, and they'd have to be able to pull off of Spring to get to their parking spots.
Chris, why couldn't they just park in the existing drive that's there? If you cut this parking lot, yeah, exactly. Right, why can't they just park there and you run the fence all the way across there?
There's no concrete there.
There's no concrete in this driveway?
Actually, it's gravel.
Well, okay, why can't they park there?
I suppose they could. It just wouldn't make sense. I'm being honest.
Yeah.
It is a dual purpose. It is also for traffic to pass through.
Yeah. Okay.
Chris, did you meet with any of your other neighbors?
I wrote
around
them all
there?
letters. I did hear from 3 that responded favorably. Of course, there were 16 letters, so I didn't hear from anyone that had anything negative to say or constructive to say.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
Is there anybody from the audience that would like? Can you state your name for the record, please?
I'm Lurleen Runyon, and I own the property at 1924 South Spring, directly south of the property that he wants to develop. Well, when he developed his parking lot or extended the one he has now, he asked me to get information to build a retaining wall because he bought the property on 28th Street, and then he filled in half of that lot because it was his property. And then he had to make a retaining wall so he could fill in that lot. But when originally the lot was dirt and trees and a drop off, and when he developed the lot, I said if he'd make the retaining wall all the way, but he didn't want to go across the back of my property. And so when he put asphalt on all this property, and then he took away the shrubs and trees, and when we had, he didn't put a gutter in, and when we had a 4-inch rain, it all was like a water slide, and it went down west, back of his property. And then it went south because the retaining wall, the dirt had gotten up, and it took out 30 feet of my block basement that I rented, and so I had to, the wall was taken out because of all that rain from the water that came because he didn't put the gutter in. And then all the trees were gone that used to keep the, where the water would go in. And I certainly wouldn't want it going off to Spring because there's enough traffic there anyway. I don't like to be, it's a commercial now, and I've had enough damage. I don't want any more. And then he never did put up a privacy fence, so his parking lot faces directly into my backyard where the lights shine in my back. So I feel like 7 years and he never bothered to put up a privacy fence. He did at his own place, but not on my property. And I feel like and then he never talked to me again. So.
And you heard him discuss that it would be engineered so that the parking lot would drain onto the existing Bagel Boy property. And if there
I
is,
don't know how it can because it starts sloping down at that level. And my property's right to the south of that, where he wants to develop. And there's big trees there right now, which are probably are hurting my retaining wall.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Arlene, if you could have your drainage taken care of, could you see an issue with having a parking lot there instead of the property?
Well, I certainly wouldn't want, my son used to own property at 312 South Prairie where you have munchies and all that, and so you have an alley, and then it went off, you know, it went off onto Prairie, and you had a back alley, and then off on 11th Street, and so it was just traffic all the way around the property. So you lost a neighborhood because of commercial endeavors. I know
Arlene,
they
that's
are
what
busy.
staff is talking
Why doesn't
about.
he move his little house and fill it in and add parking to where that he owns on 28th Street? He owns a property there. He added on to that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, yes, he owns a house on 28th Street, a little house, and it's right next, well, it's just south of his parking lot right now.
Thank you, Arlene.
any other questions of Arlene? Thank you. Please come forward.
My name is Rogene Brown. It's spelled R-O-G-E-N-E. And I wasn't planning on speaking, so I apologize. I live at 1909 South Spring, and I was in favor of this because of the letter I received from Mr. Pappas. I don't know if you received a copy of this, but nowhere in here does it state that he plans on having an exit out to Spring Avenue. And as a resident of Spring Avenue, we don't need any more traffic there. If you drive along that particular area, that block, there are hardly any driveways. Most people have parked on the street. And so when it's snowing and raining, people can't see where they're going. Plus, we consider Spring Avenue to be like Minnesota Avenue number 2. When people feel like they're going too slow on Minnesota Avenue, they come down Spring as their alternate route, and they're going 30 miles an hour. They're not going 25 as they should. Plus the fact, with Coca-Cola down at 30th and Spring, they are already barreling down Spring Avenue as their main thoroughfare. I can't imagine adding somebody else trying to get out of a parking lot onto Spring Avenue with people parked on both sides of the street trying to see without hitting something. I believe there would just be a lot more accidents. As I said, I was in favor of this because the way it sounds, looking at that property, it would be nice just to have the house that's there, yard cleaned up, because the garage that's behind it that's been converted to a house is a pile. And the way they drive up into the yard is through dirt. There is no parking pad currently. I mean, there's a sloped driveway, but the people that drive to the back drive up a dirt road. And of course, when the water comes down, it turns into a gully. So then it's just a mess, and then they drive on it anyway. It's a rental property. So I agree with what you were saying, not to recommend having an access out to Spring Avenue. Having a parking lot expanded, absolutely. Love Bagel Boy. We go there every Sunday morning. But having access out to Spring, I recommend not.
Any other questions for Rogene? Did I say that right?
Yes.
No? Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments. Anybody else in the audience? No? I will look for commission action on item number 13.
Madam Chair, I make a recommendation of denial for item number 13, based on staff recommendation.
We have a motion for denial. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? No? All those in favor of denial on item 13 signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, same sign. Item number 13 is denied. Item number 14 has been deferred. On to item 15.
I think if he would have just allowed this to be off, no access.
Item 15, the applicant is Tim Axman for Ace Neon Signs, and the owner is represented by Richard Molseed for Bear McKinnon. The request is to allow a 17 feet high, 64 square feet sign as a replacement of an existing sign. And the location is 6701 South Minnesota Avenue. It's a 2-acre site, currently zoned Prairie Meadows, Planned Development District, and the existing land use is medical office. Staff has given it a compatibility rating of 4, primarily because of the residential development to the east, on the other side of Minnesota Avenue. To give a little history, the property was rezoned in 1999 to a planned development district, and the purpose of the rezoning was to allow future commercial, office, and residential uses. There was a major amendment in 1999 with stipulations to allow office uses. There was a minor amendment on the subject property in 2008. The purpose of the minor amendment was to increase the size of the sign allowed to 92 square feet and 12 foot high. Sub-area regulations allow only office signage, which is limited to 48 square foot, 6 foot high. But of course, the minor amendment was specific to this property, and the reason being that it was a multi-tenant sign for multiple tenants in the building, in the office building. We've included a map, as you see on the screen in front of you, locating that sign for the development of the project. And the next slide will show you the appearance of that sign at 92 square feet and 12 foot high. You can see the multi-tenant aspect of the sign. And the reason behind it, of course, was so you could read each one of the tenants. You wouldn't really be able to do that with limitation to 48 square foot, 6 foot high. So the request now is to replace that sign with a new sign, which is representative of the corporate logo for McKinnon. And as indicated on the slide in front of you, it's actually an 8 foot by 8 foot signage face, but it's set on a 9 foot base. So we're 17 foot high at 64 square feet. If this were in a conventional zoning district, you could take the 64 or the 48 square foot and increase it by 15% through the Board of Adjustment to get a larger sign, but you'd still not be as much as what they're asking for. However, staff understands the need to maintain a corporate logo presence for the applicant and is supportive of that portion of the sign. It's the 12 foot or it's the 17 foot height that we would like the applicant to address a need for. Otherwise, staff is recommending approval of the sign at the size presented, but limiting the height to 12 feet. And that concludes staff report.
Any questions of Steve? No? Thank you, Steve. Is the petitioner here, please?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, I'm Richard Molseed with the Bear McKinnon. We proudly opened this week the Bear Medical Group Dermatology Clinic in this subject property. We tripled the size of the dermatology clinic. Bear McKinnon, as you know, is a regional medical center. We serve a population of over 1 million people in our service area, over a geographic area larger than the state of Pennsylvania. About 60% of our patients come to us outside of the MSA. We, as we are developing specialty clinics in the Sioux Falls area that are non-hospital-based clinics, we really are looking for ease of access for a lot of people, and ease of access for people from Gregory and Marshall and Huron and Aberdeen and the entire region. And so for that purpose, we're looking at things, and we've discovered that being able to tell people go off of 229 Minnesota, go down to 77th is a very easy route for people to find. The medical services that they're looking for at that particular time. So, and we are in the process of developing a new corporate signage look. We've already started it on our main campus, and we want to extend that look throughout town. The reason we're looking at a 17-foot sign here is for identification of the property for people coming from outside of the metro area to seek medical treatment from our clinics and have the ease of access and be able to see that, to see the location of our clinics from a greater distance. A 12-foot sign there, as it is now, is relatively hard to see with the landscaping that's around. So we are asking for the permission to do a 17-foot sign at that property.
Thank you. Any questions of Dick?
Dick, I'm confused. Is this for a 17-foot sign or a 12-foot sign?
Kenny, they're requesting a 17-foot sign.
The staff is recommending a 12.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Dick?
I have another question for staff. If they could point out where this sign is actually going to be located in reference to the street.
Okay, we have two exhibits for the application. One provided by Ace Neon. That would be a pencil drawing up towards the front. There, right there. Which doesn't show dimensions for the sign, but you can see the building rectangle shape. It doesn't really show the property lines. It shows the sign out to the lower left right-hand corner of the property. But if we go to the old plan, that should be that red circle should be the location of the sign. And although it kind of intrudes into the sanitary sewer easement there, I believe that the sign permit was issued, so it's outside of the easement. A replacement of the sign would also be outside of the easement.
Okay, is there any problem with line of sight as vehicles are?
Not that I know of.
If it was 17 foot tall.
Yeah.
Steve, can you go back? There's an overhead, or there's a better one of Minnesota Avenue.
Well, it's an old aerial, yeah.
It's an old area, but that setback is still pretty I mean, it pretty much lines up with that building to the north, right?
That's correct.
So there is a
okay.
There's a significant distance from Minnesota Avenue to that.
Yeah, in the
parking
future,
lot.
Minnesota Avenue is going to get widened, and it'll fill in that space.
Steve, is it correct then if it has to stay at 12 feet in height, it can remain at the 94 square foot?
Well, what the applicant indicated to us was that if the sign was not approved as requested, that the existing sign would remain, which is 12 foot high now.
But it's going to be a lot wider then.
But it's a lot bigger sign the way it is now. Actually, they're proposing a smaller sign, except they would like to have it at a greater height.
Steve, there's a new building under construction right to the south, I think, of this particular building. Can we suppose that when staff recommends 12 feet, that's after a sign study and that's by ordinance?
No, it's because that's what the existing sign was approved at.
Okay.
And we just are uncomfortable going greater than that height because it sets a precedent in the neighborhood. New developments coming in could say, well, they got 17 feet, why can't we have 17 feet? As long as it's office development, we'd like to maintain a limit on the height. If it were commercial development, as noted in your staff report, you could get additional sign heights if you had commercial zoning and commercial development. I guess the question is how you consider this development. Vera McKinnon, is it a commercial enterprise or is it office enterprise? And are you trying to maintain compatibility in the planned development district, or are we going to allow something a little more?
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Does anybody from the audience want to speak on this item? No. I'll look for commission action.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Of staff?
Of Mr. Mulsey.
You bet. Come on back, Dick.
Dick, I'm just curious, why 17 feet? Where did that number come from, and why is that so important?
If you drive by the main campus on Cliff Avenue, you'll see that the sign there is 17 feet tall, and it's a proportion issue. It's also one that allows proportionately to have the right-sized letters to be able to see the sign and the information of the sign. There's sign studies and recommendations about it, given the traffic flow and the speed of traffic of the certain letter size that you want to have, and that puts it all into proportion on there. And that's why the 17-foot sign is what we would desire. I would clarify one thing, that information that Steve maybe had. If our request for 17 feet is denied, we would be back for a 12-foot, similar sign, but at 12-foot height. We are going to be moving towards that kind of a sign architecture, if you will, consistent. But the 17-foot, the desire for that is visibility for 60% of our patients that come to us from outside of the metro area, and to allow the right proportion for letters in the sign.
Could I follow up, Madam Chair, with another quick question? When you erected that 17-foot sign on Cliff, did you have to come to this body to get that approved?
No, that was part of our PDA, and so it was allowable under the existing PDA there.
Interesting.
And I don't think if you drive by Cliff that sign is an obnoxious sign in relationship. You do have a lot of setback. Minnesota Avenue has been improved there. It's 4 lanes with a divided median in front of the building. It's a single-use building now, as opposed to being a 12-tenant building at one time, and it is it's generating some very unique types of medical services there that are in very high demand in the region. We are planning on rapidly expanding the number of dermatologists that operate out of that building.
Thank you, Dick. Any other questions of Dick? Okay, thank you. I'll look for commission action on item number 15.
Madam Chair, I would move approval and removal of that stipulation of 12 feet.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
No second.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second for item number 15. Any discussion?
Well, I would only, I was curious, that's the reason I brought him back up here. I've driven by that sign on Cliff Avenue, and I would agree with Mr. Mulsey. It doesn't seem to be obtrusive in any way, shape, or form to me. And they've done some studies, and they've come up with the idea that they must need that height in order to make it more readily viewable. And I don't know why we'd be objecting to another 5 feet, I guess.
Having just sat on the sign study committee, signage is one of those ever fluid projects that you can never make everyone happy. And I think the fact that this is actually a reduction in square footage of signage, and I would say better overall presentation. It's certainly understandable why they had the sign they had before when it's a multi-tenant building. But I would tend to agree with you, Denny, that I think overall the presentation of this is better. I think we find in communities such as ours, signage is actually less is becoming more in the signage world, that you don't, I know we're giving him more height, but actually the square footage of the signage is significantly less, and that's actually what I probably like best about this, is that it's higher, yes, but the overall square footage is less.
If I might add, I'm going to support staff on this one, and certainly nothing against Avera. I think once you set a precedent, we've got another building going in next door. If we allow 17 feet height, they're going to expect it. I think some of the existing buildings there that are under the 12-foot height rule could come back, and I guess maybe there's nothing wrong with 17 feet. I think it makes it tough with staff when they've got an area where something's been set. We make some exceptions to it. That's certainly nothing I'll be a patient there. My doctor's there, so so don't take it personal.
Thanks, Ken. Anything else? So we have a motion and a second for approval of item 15 with no stipulations. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Let's see some hands. Can we please? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 3. Item number 15 passes 4-3 with no stipulations. Item number 16.
Good evening again, Madam Chair. The item number 16 is a design review application in the Downtown Design Review District to construct a mixed-use building. The applicant is requesting design review approval in order to begin construction on a 4-story mixed-use building with 30 apartment, and that may need clarification. I've heard a couple different numbers, but it's 30 or 36 apartments and office and retail space on the first floor. The general location is at 522 North Main Avenue within about a half an acre in size. The existing zoning is in the C3 Central Business District, and the existing land use is a vacant warehouse. To the north is C3, to the south is C3, to the east is C3, and to the west is the Minnehaha County Planned Development District with a government complex. All of those rate at a compatibility of 5, meaning that the plan is in complete compatibility with the surrounding uses. In 2007, members of a development coalition responded to a city request for proposals to development land just west of Falls Park. The land is adjacent to the Phillips Avenue extension to Falls Park and is Zone 3C Central Business. In addition, the land lies within the downtown boundary. A request for tax increment financing district was also received by the city, whereby TIF number 8 was created to assist with development infrastructure expenses. At this time, 2 buildings on site have been renovated and occupied, the Larson Square, which is residential, office, and retail, and the Tri-State Creamery Building, which is offices. The proposed structure will be to the south of the Tri-State Creamery Building along the east side of North Main Avenue. This is the first new building constructed as part of the Uptown at Falls Park development. To go over the design review, I'll just highlight this first section and then highlight the main staff comment on it. So as far as the standards of the Downtown Design Review District go, number 1 is building orientation and step back. Staff's comment is that this is the first new structure on the site and its design and location meets the original intent of the Uptown at Falls Park proposal. The second is building height. Staff's comment is the building is not expected to exceed 4 stories in height. The existing building in proximity to the subject property include the Tri-State Creamery Building at 2 stories and further to the north, the Larson Square Building at 3 stories. Across Main Avenue lies the historic Coliseum and recently constructed Health and Human Services Complex. Item number 3 is the building width. The proposed structure will have 48,815 square feet of occupied floor space, thus necessitating the design review application before the Planning Commission. The applicant has taken care to consider the provision of design guidelines because of the precedent-setting nature of this building. The building, as noted, is 4 stories in height and makes use of windows and brick insets to differentiate portions of the metal wall system differentiate portions of the building from the metal wall system in place on the northwest and southwest corners of the building facade. Balconies will be utilized on all 4 sides of the building on floors 2 through 4. Number 4, building color and texture. The colors proposed for the building are typical of downtown buildings, incorporating medium brown, aluminum, and gray. The building style and color schematic largely complements existing structures. Item 5 is materials. The proposed building is consistent of colors and materials that are representative of previous downtown development and includes items such as cedar siding, galvanized metal balconies, and aluminum storefronts and windows. Item 6 is proportion of openings. The submitted renderings indicate that 1 main level entrance will exist on the west side, which is Main Avenue, of the building, and 5 additional entrances will be located on the north side of the parking lot, which is the parking lot of the building. Item number 7 is historic remodeling. The current building on site, the DeKalb building, is in a substantial state of disrepair and cannot be renovated in an economically feasible manner. This building will be demolished in order to clear the site for this proposed development. The demolition of this structure was reviewed by the Sioux Falls Board of Preservation and the State Historic Preservation Office, and the reviews came out favorable for development. In the horizontal alignment, which is item 8, a precast concrete bar will extend the width of the building height on each floor level. This concrete bar will serve as an additional architecture enhancement and substantially contribute to reducing the facade monotony that can be generated in large buildings. And I will kind of wrap this up a little bit as we go. You have most of the text in your staff report. So as far as other considerations are concerned, that's where I did want to highlight landscaping. The applicants have designed the building to help establish the standards and context of the Uptown at Falls Park project. 7 different floor plans of the residential apartments on 2 through 4 have been detailed. Location of the trash pickup and dumpster areas have not been shown on the site plans, and the applicant should be prepared to address this at the time of building review. The trash dumpsters shall be screened from public view, and pickup should be in a location that minimizes impacts to future residents, tenants, and the general public. Acquisition of the land needed to complete the project is progressing, and the applicant should be prepared to address any questions relating to timelines at the public hearing. The Shape Sioux Falls 2035 Comprehensive Plan designates this area as a regional employment center, which should include commercial, office, residential, and institutional uses. The subject property lies within the downtown boundary, and the proposal reflects the intent of both the 2015 Downtown Plan and the 2035 Comprehensive Plan. Members of the Downtown Design Review Committee have received copies of the proposal and may provide rec comments prior to or at the public hearing. In my conversations with the Community Development Department, members of the Downtown Design Review Committee have reacted favorably to this proposal. The recommendation of staff then is, because the subject application generally meets the intent and purpose of the Downtown Design Review District and meets the intent of both the 2015 Downtown Plan and the 2035 Comprehensive Plan, we are recommending approval of the Downtown Design Review application with 4 conditions. Number 1 is that final landscaping plan shall be submitted to the planning director or designee for approval prior to the issuance of the building permit. Number 2, master sign plan shall be submitted for approval of the Downtown Design Review Committee and the planning director. Number 3, final lighting master plan showing a photometric plan and plans for the style, type, and height of all proposed outdoor lighting elements should be submitted for approval by the planning director. And the 4th item is that trash enclosures and utility equipment shall be located as to not interfere with the function or view sheds of the general public, residents, and tenant of the proposed project. And that concludes staff report.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions of Dave? Thing I would note is that this is a unique application. It's a design review. We typically don't have design review.
That's correct.
But we will, hopefully, as we continue to see the redevelopment of the Phillips to the Falls area. So
Hopefully we'll see several of them downtown.
let's hope. So thank you, Dave. Is the applicant here, please?
Good evening. Craig Lloyd with Lloyd Companies, 5105 or West 57th Street. Forgot where I even work. So,
Do you have anything else to add, Greg?
not really. Staff really did a good job. And
When do you propose to begin construction?
we have a hearing sometime, I think, in September, October on the TIF application. And shortly thereafter, we should be able to close on the loan and get started.
So before the end of the year?
Yep.
Great. Any other?
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Looks like an exciting adventure. Good for you. We need it down there.
That whole area is a unique adventure. So it's been more than a challenge. So, but we're excited about it. And we love downtown, and we're wanted to get more housing units downtown because that's what's going to make for a stronger downtown area, and we're excited about it.
Thank you. Anybody from the audience, or anybody have any questions, further questions? Craig, thank you. Dick, do you want to talk about this project? Okay, thank you. Okay. I'll look for commission action on item number 16.
Madam Chair, I'd move for
Design review.
move for design review of item number 16 with 4 stipulations.
I'll second.
We have a motion in a couple seconds. All those, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Item number 16 carries. I'll look for,
Madam Chair, I make a
Adjournment.
Madam
motion
Chair,
for
there's only
adjournment.
one person left in the audience anymore. Maybe you'd like to introduce her.
Sid, are you ready to go? Okay. A second on adjournment. There were a couple first.
A second.
Thanks, everybody.